Welcome to the Segal Seminar Series. Today is our last in our themed program this quarter on social entrepreneurship. And today we have some of our own. We have who are robotic students who have graduated and are now pursuing a company, and their company is actually targeted at making a difference in the world, and in particular helping young people who have diabetes, learning how to take care of themselves, and they're doing it with teddy bear, and you're going to see that story today.
Yay! Hi guys, my name is Chung.
Hey, I'm Aaron.
And we are the inventors of Sproutel and our first product, Jerry the Bear. But before we go on, we have a little video to show you. I guess we'll start it off from there.
First, you gotta get a strip. Then it has to tell you a code. Prick your finger. Then the blood will come out. Then it would read your number and tell your blood sugar. Then you put the insulin in here. This just injects it. You pull this up and then...
As parents, you're constantly trying to protect your child from the stigma of this institutional feel. It's normal. There's nothing wrong with him.
You have this idea of what you want for your kids. You know, their life is to be carefree. And he does really good, but you can see it in his face sometimes that, you know, he's not a normal kid. You know, he has diabetes and it's hard.
If there's a way that we can make it a little less clinical, a little less medical, a little more fun, then we're all for it.
So Sproutel is our company. We make interactive teaching toys for children that are diagnosed with a chronic illness. And so Jerry the Bear is the first product of Sproutel. It's a cuddly teddy bear for kids with type 1 diabetes that teaches them how to manage a healthy diet, check their blood glucose levels, and recognize their symptoms. With diabetes especially, and with a lot of things, the ramifications don't happen until later in life. It's not something you can rationalize to a child. It's really abstract and it's scary. So instead of using scare tactics, we use fun, we use play.
It's time for carb games. Feed me the amount of carbs on my screen.
For a certain period of time, you're just worried about, in the medical community, you're worried about getting it right. You know, you want to create the best possible information and you want it to be correct. And now that we've gotten to that point, it's about providing that care and providing that information in the best way. He's got this backpack, and in it, he's got his foods and his insulin pen.
We are special and brave bears. I need to take insulin when I eat to stay healthy.
You know, they give you as much as you can, but once you walk through your own door, you're on your own, literally.
I mean, we didn't know anybody with diabetes that was close to us that, you know, there was really nothing to compare it to. To have that bear to bring home with us and, you know, say, just like Jerry, you have to do this just like Jerry, I think is a big thing for kids to have somebody they feel like they can relate to.
Health doesn't end when you leave the hospital. This is something that kids can take with them and work with in the course of their everyday lives, and that's where health happens.
If you squeeze Jerry's hand, he'll tell you what his blood glucose level is.
My blood sugar level is 149.
He's perfect.
What we really believe is human-centered design. It's the idea that you always talk to the users to really come up with the design that's emotionally compelling and it makes sense.
And that's really the lens that we use. You know, it's not sort of art, it's not engineering, it's just this sort of whole brain thinking. Jerry is just understanding a human need to help out this very emotional thing. This concept of bridging empathy between parent and child is a very sort of deep human desire. The ultimate goal is seeing Jerry the Bear in the hands of every child diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And we're going to do it.
So as Aaron is fixing the slide difficulties, the video that you have seen is a very polished version of our story. You know, I mean, these are people that we actually tested with, and it is really not scripted. It's a real codes from families that we tested with, but it really shows about maybe 2 or 3% of what we really do as social entrepreneurs. So before we go on and talk about and share our stories, there are a couple terms I want to go over to make sure it makes sense as you listen to our stories. The first thing is social entrepreneurship, and the way we define the simplest way possible is leveraging the power of the business to solve a problem that creates social impact. But in order to build a really good business, the process is really important. In our case, as the video mentioned it before, the process that we use is human-centered design. And just to summarize what we talked about before, I'm pretty sure all of you guys, being a Northwestern student, you know what human-centered design is. But it's pretty much really understand your users' emotional and physical needs. And you build a lot of prototypes and build tests multiple times until you create the power that empowers the users. And this process of user-centric or customer-centric, sometimes users and customers are different, this really existed in the business world. So one similar example might be Lean Startup Model by Steve Blank, kind of similar to build, test often, create a customer-centric model. But the part I want to highlight is that in order to build a really good business, it has to be user-centric, and you really need to understand your customers. So, Aaron and I, we spend a lot of time together. We have 3 people in our company, but before we hired another person, it was 2 people. And we kind of joked around saying that being an entrepreneur is like having diabetes. And I'll explain that why. So, when someone has diabetes, your daily job is to check your blood sugar level about 5 times a day. And this is kind of interesting because when you see a daily log of their blood sugar level, it looks like this. And there's a lot of lows and high moments. It looks like a really intense, scary roller coaster ride. And it's kind of interesting because depending on what you eat, what you don't eat, whether you exercise or not, even if whether you're having a sick day or not, your blood sugar level changes dramatically. So, throughout the day, even though you're really good at taking care of yourself, you might be in a healthy level throughout the whole day afternoon. By night, you might be hitting 300, which is really, really high as a blood glucose level. And relating to that story, Aaron and I had a lot of high and low moments, and we still experience them. So a person with diabetes, when you're having a low blood sugar level, you need food with carbs to raise that level. For our low moments, what we do is we think about, why did we make this mistake? What kind of lessons can we take away from this to get on track and fulfill our mission? When a person with diabetes have high blood sugar level, you need insulin to lower your levels. I mean, in our case, high moment is a little bit different from the diabetes term. Ours is a celebration moment, but we actually celebrate. This worked. Let's save and document this recipe that works so that we can continue to use this in future circumstances. And the way we see our healthy state is to focus on your mission of creating a powerful product for children with type 1 diabetes to really make learning about diabetes or coping that emotional process really, really fun and actually make it really easy. So, and the thing is, the process is really not linear. It's really jumbled, it's really intense, but that makes it really, really fun. So, what is it like to live as a social entrepreneur? What is our daily life like? So in our talk, we have tons of stories to share. I mean, tons of stories. So we're going to share our high and low moments in little vignettes, like a journal. So the first story, we'll scroll all the way back to 2009. And, at that time, I was a freshman at Northwestern University, and I was entering my spring quarter, and I was studying mechanical engineering. And at that time, my initial teammates, Mert Isri and Yuri Molina, we are so hyped up to launch Design for America. And our first project was to compete at this Diabetes Mind blog, and the problem was, how can you help the lives of people living with diabetes? And by the way, Diabetes Mind is one of the most respected online blogs in the nation for people with diabetes. And we went to the hospital, talked to doctors, brainstormed for many, many hours, and actually searched on Google until we couldn't see the end of the O or the GLE coming up. And what we saw was that there's this really mysterious gray area of kids experiencing their early diagnosis of diabetes and the way they learn. There was nothing interactive. The way they learn is really scary. And they give out this book to a parent that is like black and pink and white. I mean, how scary is that, the color combination, first of all? But, it's really, even for me, I had no idea what they're talking about. So we came up with this concept, okay, let's build something interactive and fun for kids. So we came up with this Post-it note drawing of Jerry the Bear and made a really low quality video, and we won the most creative prize. So the idea was validated, and that fueled us to launch Design for America. Let's start this and really spread how design can be awesome and solve complex problems. So we started out at Northwestern University, and now we have 14 studios across the nation. So exciting. And at that time, Jerry the Bear seems like a cool story, but what happened was it was still on the shelf in a Post-it note, and nothing has been touched. And what we realized was Jerry the Bear, even though it was a cool story in the beginning, it became a failing story. And what it struck us was that we can't continue to tell this story as if it is successful, because honestly, we never gave even this Post-it or a drawing of Jerry the Bear to the actual hands of the user. And what it struck us was that, okay, well, we don't like to lie, because we are not liars. And if you want to create this impact, we need to do something. And that do something was, okay, how about let's just make a prototype, no matter how ugly it is, and let's take it from there. And now the Journal of Many Stories starts, and I'll hand it over to Aaron.
So chapter 1 is sort of building the first prototype, and hearkening back to when Hannah said that taking that idea off the shelf and building a first prototype, it was actually a meeting we had with Professor Colgate, where I believe we asked him to help us find grad students to do this for us. And he was like, why don't you do it yourself? And so we were sort of faced at the start of that year with, okay, we need to take this idea from a Post-it note into reality. The only hiccup is, the only catch is, we have no idea about how to build a robotic teddy bear. We don't know about electronics or robotics. So what we did is we knocked on Professor Peshkin's door, and we bugged him until he graciously offered us an independent study. And for those next 10 weeks, we set a really audacious goal, which was to have a prototype of Jerry ready to test with a child by the end of that period. And so I won't really go into the details of all of the difficult moments of circuits not working and code not compiling and missing countless semicolons. But we'll sort of jump ahead to the actual prototype itself. And I can say this because I'm one of the people that built this. This is one of the ugliest things I've seen in my entire life. It's our beautiful baby, but whenever we would take this to test with a child, it would scare the living daylights out of them. It had eyes that blinked. This girl's arm is blocking the fact that that bear's head is only held to its body by 3 2-inch long metal brads that attach the fur around its neck to its hard modeling foam chest. But really what this showed us is that we have the power to learn these skills and to pick up what's needed to carry this project forward. And that this is something worth devoting a little bit more time to. So this really brings us to chapter 2, which is testing with Adam. This is the first child that we tested with. And Adam is a boy. He was 8 years old at the time when we tested with him. And he lives out in Skokie, Illinois. And being college students, we really had no way to get there, so we bugged one of our friends for a ride. So we all piled into his red Mustang, a bear in tow, and drove out to Skokie. And we thought it would be a great idea to, when we walked into the house, to cover the bear with a blanket. And that's because we wanted to conduct an introduction interview with this family, and we didn't want the kids to get really excited about the bear and to start playing with it. We wanted to have a really pure intro interview. So we all pile out of this red Mustang. We have the blanket over the bear, and we're walking up to the door. And Adam and his little brother, they have their face plastered against the glass. They're so excited to see this bear. They had read about it online, and their eyes are glistening. We get in there. We do the interview with the mother. We talk to Adam. And the most beautiful moment happens. It's right after we lift off this long-awaited veil. And we really see how truly innocent and truthful children are. The first words out of Adam's mouth are, "That looks nothing like what I saw online." And for the next 15 minutes proceeded to point out no short of 40 flaws that we had in our prototype. Its blood glucose level was 2 digits, and people's blood glucose levels are 3 digits. And just countless errors. But what it showed us, despite all that failure, when we took a step back, seeing that look in his eyes, the fact that him and his brother were running to the door to greet us, it showed us that there was some merit behind this idea. That the concept of a teddy bear for kids with diabetes was something that was wanted and it was needed for these children. And so that really sort of propelled us forward and said, this is something that is worth devoting even more time to. This is worth pursuing and making another prototype. And that's really the segue to chapter 3, moving to Rhode Island.
But before.
So I forgot this part. So We currently have no record. This was lost into the bowels of time doing poor documentation. So for all of those out there who are doing a project, please, please, please document it well.
Is this the video with Adam?
Yes, this is the video. Nice!
Thank you, Mert.
Take it all back. Okay, never mind.
Never mind, we have it.
Well, you never know when you might be invited back to give a talk at your alma mater, and you might need to use a slide. So. Which brings us to chapter 3, and that's moving to Providence, Rhode Island. So after we had completed that teddy bear, we entered into a competition called the Dell Social Innovation Competition. And we actually got a small fellowship. It's called the Dell Social Innovation Fellowship to continue our prototyping over the summer. And everybody else had gotten an internship except for me. And so I was like, OK, sweet. I'm going to work on Jerry for the summer. It was awesome. So the sequence of events was, got back from Northwestern around like June 10th. I ordered all the electronic components I would need for the first prototype, or that I thought I would need, on June 12th. On June 13th, I actually had hip surgery. And on June 15th, I sat down on my kitchen table. My mind was a little bit foggy. And I started banging out the next prototype of Jerry. And so fast forward a couple months, the one sort of catch of getting this grant was I had to meet all of the other social entrepreneurs who had also received it. Seems easy enough. I had just started walking again, so this was great. I got to leave my house. And so I went to Providence, Rhode Island, which is where everybody was meeting each other. And I was introduced to a really interesting community of social entrepreneurs. What I didn't know is that Providence actually has the largest population of social entrepreneurs of any city in the US. And so I was just greeted by all of these individuals who wanted to help me, from the head of corporate giving at Hasbro Toys to a CEO of a medical device design company. And I was like, wow, this place is really cool. And so this idea started twinkling in the back of my mind, like, hey, I kind of want to find a way to get back to Providence again. So I get back at the start of fall quarter, and I go to Sammy. I'm like, hey, Sammy, is there any way that, like, does Design for America have anything going on in Providence? Like, is there any way I can get back there? And she's like, well, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go down there in, like, 3 weeks for a conference called A Better World by Design. Do you want to lead the workshop? Yes. So go and lead the workshop for Design for America. I meet even more cool people. And this little idea that was twinkling in the back of my mind gets a little bit bigger. And I think to myself, hey, it'd be crazy to move to Rhode Island. It's the fall quarter of our senior year, but we're kids. We're kind of crazy. We don't have families. We don't have mortgages. And so I'm like, OK, when I get back to Northwestern, I'm going to ask Hannah. And so I get back. The first time I see Hannah, I blurt out, like, hey, Hannah, you want to move to Rhode Island? And I had like this whole speech prepared of like, oh, this is how I'm going to convince her, and this is how it's going to go. And immediately she's like, yeah, let's do it. I was like, whoa. And lo and behold, what I didn't know is that like 2 days before, she had a hours and hours long talk with her parents, telling them that what she wanted to do in her life was to work full time on Jerry. And so the next couple of weeks, we were a little bit of a blur. We were really thankful to have awesome deans and professors that were willing to let us take independent studies over Skype so that we could graduate from Rhode Island. And what this really was is it was a physical move, but it was really a symbolic move. And it was a commitment that we're going to spend the next couple of years of our life working on Jerry. And we're going to see this through to getting it into the hands of children. And so that was kind of a real turning point in our journey and the decision to work on this full time. And that brings us to the last story I'll tell before I hand it back over to Hannah. And that's chapter 4, Spanish radio. So this might resonate for anybody that's done any hardware or electronics in the audience. So we're on I think it's about our 5th prototype, and I just started to learn how to spin our own circuit boards. This was a really fun experience for me. Do a board, I get it in, I solder it, I make sure it worked. But I hit a roadblock. So at about our 5th board, this is what it looked like. Got it in, I was really stoked. I assembled everything together. I put the chip on, code was running, LEDs were blinking, sensors were reading, screen was printing. There was one problem. Whenever Jerry would try to open his mouth and say something like, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, come play with me, instead of speaking, he would play Spanish mariachi music. You have no idea how frustrating this is. This is like black magic. Like I didn't put mariachi music in there. Like, what the heck is going on? And this plagued me for like 2 months. I didn't know what to do. And it wasn't until I came back to Northwestern for sort of thankfully we were still taking classes at this point for our mid-semester check-in. And my head hung low. I walk into Professor Peshkin's office. And I'm like, Professor Peshkin, I don't know what to do.
He's playing Spanish radio music. I don't know what it is. And so he pulls out the schematic on one half of this circuit, the data sheet in the other of the chip that we're using. Takes about a minute, looks at it, looks one, looks at the other. Says, I know your problem. It's like, really, what is it? He's like, you left your VREF pin unattached. So for everybody, what that means is I had left one pin unattached, one pin on an 8-bit analog to digital converter, and somehow it had decided it wanted to become an AM radio frequency antenna and pick up the local Spanish radio station and play all musical stylings from Spanish dubstep to mariachi music. And as funny as that is, what it really was is a lesson in how valuable a mentor network is. So having somebody that you can go to and ask a question everywhere from hardcore electronics of why isn't my circuit working to why isn't my business model working, or how can we make this more efficient? And so now I'll toss it over to Hannah and she'll walk you through sort of the continuing saga of Jerry. Yeah, totally.
So does Michael Dell have a degree?
Michael Dell in what?
Founder of Dell.
Yeah.
I don't think he does.
Right. Does Bill Gates have a degree?
No, he doesn't.
Does Hannah and Aaron have degrees?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So.
Sorry, we didn't mention that. We graduated and it was incredible.
Feels great. So, chapter 5, becoming the bear people. So when we go to conferences or events, we always wear the bear pajama. And, this pajama is awesome in the winter, not so much in the summer. I mean, mine has a little zipper in the back to vent some air in it, but it just doesn't work at all. And when you talk to people about this, they think it's a great way to advertise their company, but the real reason why we wear this is we want to talk to kids in their eye level. We want to eliminate the barrier of child versus adults. And actually, so my personal story behind the bear suit is I really wanted one. So I really wanted that. And it's because my old roommate had it. I mean, when I was a student, I always see people at Northwestern walking around in public in their onesies. I thought it was a great idea. And I was one day not having a productive day, and I was kind of wasting my time on eBay. And I found this kigurumi, which is Japanese word of animal costume, whatever. And this creepy woman with a bear suit popped out, and I thought it was really, really cool. And I talked to Aaron. Aaron, we should get bear pajamas to represent Sproutel. And he was like, no, that's stupid. So, and then I was like, okay, well, people around me thought it was a good idea. So it was $80. It was super expensive, made us fleece. But, I thought, I just graduated. It's my biggest post-college investment ever. So I bought it. And 3 weeks in, a couple of days later, we were invited down to this diabetes walk in the southern part of Rhode Island. And the deal was you have to walk for 3 miles with these kids. And we had a booth to have a play session for kids to experience, to play with Jerry the bear. So, and it was winter, so of course I wore my bear suit, and I'm walking around for 3 miles, and we came back to the booth, and we started having these play sessions. And at that time, Aaron didn't have his bear suit. So there's Aaron with his winter coat and me with the bear suit standing right next to the booth. And what happened was all the adults would go to Aaron, but all the kids would come to me. So, and all the kids would ask me, like, why are you dressing up like that? You look stupid. But what happened was they shared everything what they had in their mind. And what I realized was that my bear suit created a very comfortable environment for these kids to share their insights. And the biggest learning that I had was, when you're a researcher or a designer, creating an empowering product, sometimes you need to dress up stupid to create the comfortable environment to get the most insights as possible. And that actually inspired Aaron to get his bear suit too. So now we both have a bear suit. And what happened is when we go to conferences, all the kids will come up to us and all the adults will call us bear people. Like, oh, there's a bear people coming in. So I hope they know our real names too at some point. But I don't really mind being the bear people until we create that impact. So the next picture is us wearing our bear suits together. So I guess we can jump into our next story, which is.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So how did you decide to not listen to Aaron and say, and listen to your other friend and say, I'm going to get it no matter what?
I think it's a cooler factor.
I just want to throw this in. I didn't say she shouldn't get one. I just said I don't want to wear one.
But I mean, peer pressure pressure is a big deal, right? So how do you choose when, can you offer insight to everybody? How do you choose when to listen to your best friends and when to ignore them?
I think, well, what I really did was I actually wrote a Facebook post on my wall saying like, you know, do you think it's a great idea for me to get this bear suit? And I had tons of likes and tons of people saying, yeah, do it. So I think that was a validation for people around me. Yeah, but I think even though I didn't have the validation, I would have spent it anyway. If someone bought it for me, that would be more awesome. But, but I mean, I have no regrets buying this bear suit, and I wash it pretty often too sometimes. And so moving on to our chapter 6, the serendipitous meetings. So this kind of touch upon our fundraising journey, I guess. So when you're an entrepreneur, you run into the fundraising cycle, depending on what your stage you're in. So this is, you know, Aaron and I went through the accelerator program called Beta String in Providence, and when you're done, we jump into a fundraising mode. And instead of raising money from venture capitalists, we went to angels. And what I mean by angels here is they don't have halos around their heads or have wings. You know, these are very wealthy individuals who provide their capital to fund different types of startups. And I guess we have two interesting stories. So one story is how we met the founder and the former CEO of Build-A-Bear. Her name is Maxine Clark, and we met her on Facebook. And, you know, it's not really creepy or anything. It's actually a really cool story, I think. You know, when you say, I met her online, it can be, you know, OkCupid or dating site, but it's not like that. You know, what happened was I had a friend, Julie Ma, who was working at Good Magazine at the time. And Good Magazine is like a really powerful media channel for people who cares about the social cause, social impact. And we had this article. And what was interesting about this article was that, you know, we had press in Huffington Post, Inc., and you know, MIT Tech Review, and many outlets like that. But Good, you know, tapping the right audience, we had the most you know, people coming out to us, like, who are parents of people, kids with diabetes, coming up to us, want to help us out. So it was a really, really great way to connect with people. And what really amazing happened was Good included this story in their newsletter and sent it out to their 7 million subscribers in Good, and it was really spread across the nation. And you know, after the article was launched, we had all this message coming up to us saying, like, I want to talk to you guys, how can we help? And one of the messages that we got was the one from Maxine saying, like, hey, I'm the chief executive bear, you know, how can I help? And we thought it was really cool to meet her, so you know, we decided to send her a bear. So what we did was we built our prototype in a Build-A-Bear shell, put it in a Build-A-Bear box, and surrounded it by clouds, which is stuffing because we had a lot of leftovers. And we sent it out to Maxine, and during our call, she played with the bear, and we actually, you know, thanked us for creating this really impactful bear and decided to hop on our journey. So, you know, it was really cool to meet her, and she was maybe one of the few people who really understands how to communicate to children through a bear language. So it was really cool to get her insight from that. Our second story is our realization of why an elevator pitch is an elevator pitch. So when you're fundraising, we went to Boston a lot. It's like an hour commute from Providence, but we met a lot of mentors and investors there. And but this one particular day, we had to go to this building called Cambridge Innovation Center. It's right by MIT, and there's where a lot of different startups and venture capitalists live there, have their offices there. And we had to use their MakerBot because, you know, as you can see from this bear, we're designing this casing, and we wanted to kind of do a lot of rapid prototyping. So we went there, and it was on the 6th floor, and as we were done building this casing, we came out, and we were waiting for our elevator. And all of a sudden, this bald man with a leather jacket comes up to us and stands right next to us. And now I want you guys to imagine how me and Aaron really looked like. So at that time, our Jerry prototype was really fragile. And we were not comfortable carrying around Jerry in exposed air, so we put him in a toolbox. And thank you, Northwestern EECS, for providing that awesome toolbox. And I was holding like this, waiting for the elevator. And Aaron, being a huge longboarder, he is showcasing his skateboard and just like chilling like that. And you know, the ride was, you know, the elevator wait was really long, and this bald leather jacket person starts talking to Aaron, saying like, what a nice ride. And Aaron was like, yeah, so what are you up to in CIC? And he says, you know, I'm an investor. I'm looking for some companies to invest. And the elevator door opens, and I come in saying like, So we carry this toolbox everywhere we go. So we walk into the elevator, and coming down from the 6th floor to the 1st floor, nonstop, we talked about what happened that day. We talked about, we met the button makers. They were really cool. We printed out this casing. It's pink. It's weird, but it's going to work. And we talked about what it's like to build this bear. And the 1st floor elevator door opens up, and he says, "I'm in. This is my business card," and he just magically disappears. On our way back, we're curious people, so we started Googling him. And turns out his name is Samuel Ducach, and he's one of the founders of MIT Blackjack team. So, he's an entrepreneur there too, and he's looking for companies with social impact to invest in. It was a perfect fit. So, we still haven't seen him playing blackjack, or he never taught us how to play blackjack, but sometimes we hope he will. But it's kind of cool to see how, sometimes the way you meet people or mentors can be really, really unique. And, when you talk about that, we still laugh about it. So it's one of the great experiences we had. And now we can go back to prototyping. And this is chapter 7, the Sproutel factory. So summer is like a peak season for conferences and events. And one of the big conferences for children with type 1 diabetes is called Children with Diabetes Friends for Life. It's hosted in Orlando, and they bring about 5,000 families to Orlando, because for people with diabetes, they want to meet other families with diabetes too. It's a really, really unique experience for just people to have this conference, this experience. And we were invited down to have a testing session for 5 to 7-year-olds, and the deal was you have to bring 10 bears to test with. And before, Aaron and I, when we prototype, we always built like one bear of this one version, or 2 bears of this version, but not 10 of them. And what we realized was we are lacking arms. We can't build this in a matter of weeks, so we need to bring more people into this. So we brought our friends, including Scott, who interned with us last summer, and we fed them with apple juice, pastries, and ribs, and we started making this thing together. So I'm going to go through some slides to see what their process was like. So first, we printed out these casings. Aaron painted them, and we started drying them on top of a trash can. And this is me cutting all the card cards, making 70 of them, gluing constantly. And these are some of our friends. We're hacking the bears together to put the electronics in. And this is Aaron and another friend soldering nonstop for 3 full days. And this is how it looks like when you put the head inside out. And this is Scott, and if you click again, he's an awesome dude. And,
Scott, he's right here.
And we're sewing all the patches of the injection sites. And the next slide is how, after we painted them, coated them, put the buttons, how that looked like. And this is when you put the electronics together, how that looked like. And this is me. So I'm actually the voice of this Jerry. Like, hi, my name is Jerry. So, so this is me voice recording Jerry on the spot in a very closed environment. And I almost lost my voice. And this is us sewing and working on the strips around the card cards. And this is what it looked like before we assembled that to the bear shell. In this, Aaron, we realized we forgot to make a hole for a USB port, so Aaron had to hand cut all the casings to make sure we can put that USB port. And the next slide, it's pretty intense. The next slide is still using the Dremel to fix that. And this is me stitching the heads together for the bear. And that's how it looked like. The last slide is how these 10 bears looks like. And this Sproutel factory process happened in 3 days, in 1 weekend. And actually, the building cycle didn't end here. So we brought this bears down to Orlando, and we realized we need to code more games because we were kind of like crunching time. So we occupied one giant table in the hotel lobby, and people called us crazy people, like robot, like bear robot people, kind of looks creepy, just working on these bears. And actually Scott and Aaron were coding, and I'm voice recording still. And what happened was, in a matter of a day or two, we increased Jerry's code to more than like 30% on the spot. That happened in 2 days. And our goal was, okay, let's iterate every night, because when we test with kids, we want to tweak those errors and test a new one. And the one example is kind of interesting. So before we tested with kids, when you feed a banana to Jerry, Jerry will say, banana. And we thought it was a great confirmation. Like, kids know that was banana, and it was a great confirmation tool. And turns out it was not. So when we were testing these bears with some 5-year-olds, they thought, when Jerry says, banana, they thought Jerry wanted more banana. They keep feeding bananas to Jerry until he felt really sick. So what happened was that day, we had 10 really sick Jerrys. So, there was a point where, our assumption was totally wrong, and you have to use your test to test your assumptions. So that night, we got rid of the confirmation and just added, or nom nom, and those errors were solved. And moving on, the past year, we tested with about 300 children across the nation. And what really happened was we became really good friends with these kids, but these kids started having a really special bond with Jerry. And I would like to highlight 3 unique stories, because these stories really help us to wake up every morning to really, create that impact for these kids. So the first story is our little friend, Arjan. So Arjan is 4 years old, and we met him at that conference in Orlando. And he played with Jerry for 3 hours, like 3 hours or more, that I had to take away Jerry from him. I had to fix him. And what happened was he was having an eye exam at the conference, and he said, "Dad, I'm scared. Can I take Jerry with me?" So he took Jerry, and what happened was every time he has to go to a different machine to test his eyes, he will say, "I'm only going to test, you can test my eyes if you check Jerry's first." It was kind of interesting to see how this bear, who they feel like I can relate to this bear, like it creates a really comfortable environment. So it's really cool to see that reaction. And for us, we started having pen pal letters from kids. So there's one example where a little friend, Melissa, drew a picture of her and Jerry, because she pre-ordered Jerry, and she's waiting for in June, and she wanted to share about what happened that summer. So the next story is, what she did over the summer, and she ended with "P.S. I love you." and then we got another letter too from her older sister named Sophia, and she actually, thanked us for really making her little sister happy, and that was really, I almost cried, and it was kind of, it was really cool to see, these kids have this special bond with Jerry. And the last story I want to highlight before I, give my spot to Erin is this little girl named Kayla. So Kayla is 4.5 years old, and her parents reached out to us because 3 days prior to that, she was recently diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And she's from California, and we never had a chance to test our prototype with a really recently diagnosed child. So we sent the bear out to her to see, how she plays with. And a week later, I had a chance to Skype with her mom to see, how's everything going, how is Kayla playing with the bear. And she says, Kayla is having a great time. She was really afraid of taking injections, but after playing with Jerry, actually simulating how to inject insulin to her, the shot drama disappeared. So it's really cool to see how Jerry can really ease the tension of early diagnosis. And I think what's really cool about that is she calls Jerry a she. So, she loves dressing Jerry in her wedding dress. Like, Jerry's going to a wedding all the time. I think now she has a mermaid outfit for Jerry. But it's really cool. I mean, these are stories that really wakes us up, and we can't wait to create more impact and really bring more smiles to kids when we launch our beta versions in June. So now we're going to share our last story, which is pretty intense. And now back to Erin.
So our last story is chapter 9, if you've been counting. It's about manufacturing. And it's broken down into 2 parts. The first is Erin goes to China. And the second one is Erin goes to North Carolina. We had a lot of mentors who had worked on really, really big products that are produced in the tens of hundreds of thousands sometimes. And they had all given us the advice to go to China. Now, looking back, that might not have been the best advice, but at the time, it seemed great and it seemed logical. So we built up a lot of connections of factories that Hasbro has used, factories that some hardware hackers that we knew have used, set up some meetings, and hop on a plane to China. And this is my first time ever leaving the United States, and I had really, really grand dreams. Like, I'm going to put on a suit, I'm going to go meet with some people, and we're going to get this bear made. They were very idealistic. So the way I would describe my journey is that I met with 3 factories, and it was like Goldilocks and the 3 little bears. One had porridge that was too hot, one had porridge that was too cold, and one had porridge that was just right. So I met with these 3 factories, and the meetings all really have the same form. They last for between 8 and 9 hours. They're marathons. It starts with the car that picks you up from your hotel. Now I was staying at Shenzhen, which is just across the border from Hong Kong. And they all say that their factory is in Shenzhen, but turns out their offices are in Shenzhen and their factory is between 2 and 3 hours away, normally somewhere where they don't tell you. So then I hop in a car and I drive into the middle of nowhere where I don't know where I am. And then I arrive at a conference room that they'll set you up and they'll show you all the work that they've done in the past. They'll give you a PowerPoint presentation and then they'll walk you along the floors of the factory. And these next photos, we can go through them real quick. The really interesting thing about these is that when I got back, I actually showed this to somebody that we had worked with at Hasbro. And they had never, ever seen inside of a Hasbro factory. So I don't know if I was not allowed to take these. I did ask permission, and they said I could. But apparently not too many people get to see inside of these. So it's a cool process. So this is a plush factory where they make tens of thousands of bears, of Pikachus, and if you keep on running through the slides, of baby teething machines every single day. This guy actually in particular, that process shot that we showed before of attaching the heads to the bodies, this is the only guy that's trusted to do that in the factory. It's the hardest task. His name is Fred, and he's the guy. I talked to him for like a second, and they wouldn't let me talk to him anymore. And so sort of one of the really funny things is when I went down there, everybody had advised me, they were like, Aaron, you got to wear a suit. I know you don't like to get dressed up. You got to put on some nice shoes, put on a tie and a jacket, and like that's what you have to do for the meetings. And so I got there, I had a briefcase, I had a suit. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. It's what I'm going to do. And everybody was in t-shirts and jeans, and they would all laugh at me. I would get there, and they would be like, why are you wearing a suit? It's like 105 degrees outside. We're inside of a factory. And so that was kind of an interesting anecdote. And then the last factory that I visited, so as I said, I visited two, a plush factory and an electronics factory. And they weren't so much interested in working with us. It really taught me how important it is to align their understanding of your product with what you're actually doing. So if you go back to that last slide. So this last factory, which is actually a factory that we did end up working with, they were recommended to us by this dude who's named Bunny Huang, who just won Hardware Hacker of the Year award, if that means anything to somebody here. And so he recommended this factory to me, and since he had recommended them to me, they for some reason thought I was some kind of a savant. So when I got there, they have this office and another factory in Fremont, California. They had flown out this guy from California, and they had packed this car with like the CEO of the company and the CMO and all these really important people. And they were like, didn't really know what to do with me. they were very skittish. But after meeting with them, they really got it. They understood that this was a product that had an emotional component to it, that it was going to kids with diabetes, and they weren't pushing us to get orders that were 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. They were just fine to do an order that was 300, even knowing that our next order might only be 1,000. And so we were really, really excited. And that was the real shining point of the trip to China. And so now coming back to the US, we did something that we should have done from the very start, which was try to find somebody here that can make it. And so we found somebody that could make the electronics, and they quoted us considerably less than we could do it in the US. But the plush casing, the outer fabric, well, that seems like something we can make here, right? So a quick Google search yields that there are only 2 people that make plush in the entire United States. One of them is in Phoenix, Arizona, and the other is in Tarboro County, North Carolina. Now, the one in Phoenix, Arizona, they'll make your standard run-of-the-mill bear, goat, lion, penguin, sheep. They'll do it really fast, they do it in large quantities, and they have really, really good quality. Now, the one in North Carolina, they'll build your standard run-of-the-mill bear, goat, sheep, lion, duck, but they'll do them in sizes no smaller than 5 feet. So they make really, really big animals, reflected by their name, Big Plush. So I called up both of these factories, and I got quotes from both of them. And the factory in Arizona, they quoted me, but they weren't all too interested in adapting their current processes to sew in electronics. They have a sustainable business as it is. Where the folks in North Carolina, what I learned is that they had a factory that used to employ 1,200 people, and now it employs 55 people. And they were really, really excited about this. This is something they were always answering my calls. They were always getting back to me. And they were really excited about working with it. So I booked a flight, and I headed down to North Carolina. And I did this about a week before Valentine's Day. And what I didn't know is that Valentine's Day is this company's biggest season. What better way to show someone you love them than buy them an 8-foot-tall teddy bear that has a t-shirt that says, I love you this much. And so I was picked up from the factory, from the airport, by some factory workers. And they drove me to the factory, which is about an hour and a half outside of Raleigh, Durham. And they asked me, like, hey, you know, after you meet, do you want to hang out? Do you want to grab dinner? Like, yeah, sure, it seems cool, you know. Southern hospitality is great. I have nothing better to do. I'm in North Carolina. And so I go to the factory, and this is just to give you a sense of scale of really how big that bear is. It's a very large bear. I have the meeting with these folks, and they actually, it's a fabric factory that also makes plush. So the vast majority of the factory is, you know, looms that are weaving fabric, that are shaving it, that are dyeing it. Really, really interesting processes. And so we meet together, we negotiate, shake hands. Awesome. All is good. And as I'm leaving, the people who had picked me up earlier were like, hey, like, so you want to hang out? I was like, oh, yeah, sure, let's do this thing. So there isn't much to do in Tarboro County, North Carolina. So we drove about 20 minutes north to go bowling. And this is actually the prototype that they produced. It's a little bit rough around the edges, but we're excited to work together. This was just to sort of test their stitch quality and things like that. So anyway, so we go bowling, and if you're going to go bowling in Tarboro County, North Carolina, you got to get uniforms. So we went to the local Walmart, and for $2, I picked up this tiger shirt, and we all went bowling. And it was what better way to get to know the people who are making your product in the factory by really talking to those people who are sewing it, who are stuffing it, who are boxing it and shipping it. And this actually ended up being a far more powerful experience for me than I ever thought. As I was learning more about these folks, Benicio, the guy in the fedora, his daughter has cerebral palsy. And the woman to his right, Melinda, her son has autism. And so they didn't just understand this on a level of impact, but they were emotionally compelled to do this. And they were excited that this is what they were going to be working on. And that, you know, the takeaway here is that the factories are as much a part of your team as an employee or as a mentor. If the people who aren't producing your product don't understand it, or if they're not producing it to the quality standards that you want, it percolates through your users, through the people who are actually using it on a day-to-day basis. So this was really special to meet these guys. Now we're Facebook friends and we talk, and it's awesome. And they're the ones who are going to be making Jerry. And that's really, really cool for me. And so where we are now, just to sort of take a step back, we've run you through all of these little vignettes. And we really explained the story of getting Jerry from that idea in a Post-it that we showed from the very beginning into the hands of Angelo. And Angelo and Kayla. And where we are now is taking Jerry into the hands of every child like Kayla. And this is just sort of a process shot of where we have come from the first prototype to now, and where we'll continue going. And actually, our next prototype, it looks a little bit different than this. And this is, sorry, going ahead of myself here. We've hired a full-time Android developer. His name is Andrew Berkowitz. And he's also extremely passionate about this problem. When he was 7, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. His mother also has type 1 diabetes. So sort of furthering the team of passionate people who really understand the problem and really care about getting this into the hands of those who need it most. And so what exactly is going to be in those children's hands is a totally new and redesigned bear. This new one actually has a color touchscreen, and it plays a fully interactive 2D game. And this is something that we've actually done a lot of research on, and we've taken a lot of theories from digital game-based learning and how we can impart education in a really fun way through games. So our game follows Jerry along on a journey of competing for the Olympics on his home island, as you can see there. And in order to compete in these Olympics, he's got to learn how to play all these new sports. Oh, and by the way, in order to do that, you have to monitor Jerry's glucose levels, feed him a healthy diet, and make sure that he's well. And so the goal of the game isn't to learn diabetes. The goal of the game is to have fun. It's to compete in the Olympics. But in order to do that, you have to learn how to master diabetes. And that's really that's really the magic in it. And we're really excited to be building out the software and putting it to the new bears. And in June of this year, we're shipping our first 300 bears. So that's the milestone that we're working full steam towards now. And now, when we were asked to come and talk about Jerry, we wanted to sort of reflect a little bit on some maybe nugget, some small nugget of things that we've learned from coming from our time from Northwestern to where we are today. And when we chatted, what it really boiled down to was people, process, and problem. And if you have these, you'll be sustained through those high and low moments that you experience. This is sort of what makes sure that you're always at that healthy level. It's making sure that you surround yourself with the most brilliant people, from whether it be your factory, your mentors, or or the people on your team. Making sure that you're tackling a problem that keeps you awake at night, something that benefits humanity, and taking that right process. And for us, that process was human-centered design. And just to sort of draw a point of distinction, the only thing that separates, this is something that applies universally to all businesses. The only thing that separates a social venture from any old venture is the type of problem. It is a problem that impacts people for the better, that causes a positive social good in society. And so if there's one nugget that we could pass on, this is it. It's the 3 Ps. We're really excited it was an alliteration. And we'd really love to sort of open this up to a conversation, to take any questions that you might have. And if anything doesn't get answered, here are emails. We're super fast at responding and are more than happy to talk.
I definitely think that's the most laughing we've had in any Segal so far. Good.
I just have a comment. I am just immensely, immensely proud of you and brought to tears by what you just presented. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Professor.
Mert?
When can we get a Jerry the Bear for everyone in this room? Because I'm sure everyone's dying to buy one, right?
So Mert, the generous man you are, you can log on to www.jerrythebear.com/jerrythebear and purchase a bear.
That sounds great. I'm sure everyone will do that.
So one of the things that you emphasized throughout was the human-centered design and talking to people and identifying needs. And I'm thinking about your 300, and I'm wanting that to become 3,000, 30,000, 300,000. So I'm thinking globally. And I'm wondering if you've started to do that, and if so, the aesthetics and, how the market changes, and maybe how Jerry might change as you expand into other markets other than the United States.
Yeah, so the 2 markets that we've considered most closely are South America and are the UK. The UK has an incidence of diabetes that is actually the total population of individuals living with type 1 is 1/3 of that in the US, which is really astounding considering how much smaller their population is. The attractive thing about moving there is that it's really a unit conversion that we would have to make in our software. South America is also a very large incidence of diabetes, and the tweak that we would have to make is, I'm sure there would also be aesthetic tweaks, but it's obviously the language is making Jerry speak Spanish.
But going along with the
Yes, that might help out.
But going along with the human-centered design, so the way we launched the 300 bears is not we ship 300 bears at once. We're doing it by tiers. So we'll send 10 bears first, get the insight, how can you tweak, and then send the next 20. So we're doing that by tiers because that's also part of the human-centered design process of getting the insight to build and test. So that's on our pipeline to really follow the procedure to really streamline it.
So just one quick follow-up. How do you partner? So say you go into Great Britain. Do you partner with the Children's Hospital? How do you decide who gives those 10?
So one of the advantages, we've actually made a partnership with Children with Diabetes, and they host conferences internationally for meetups for kids with diabetes. So actually, I think their second biggest meetup, apart from here, is the UK. And so we would go to their conference in the UK and demo there. And from there, we'd meet probably a lot of other tangential and applicable people to partner with in the area.
Yeah, so you mentioned that looking back, going overseas with your electronics might not have been the best decision. I was curious, do you feel like if you went and did the research now, you could have found somebody who could have done equivalent work and for an equivalent price? Or was it just a question of putting in the time to research it, or do you think that? So
I think for us, the decision to go overseas with the electronics was sort of inevitable, and I actually have gone back after I got their quote, and I bid out the project to people in the US. And the costs just weren't comparable because they were shipping in the same components from China. And the RAM that we're using costs $1.90 in China, and it costs $21 to get here. So a lot of things like that, they just didn't make sense feasibly. The real hesitation point is I wish I had sort of architected out how it would have been manufactured. So said, okay, we have to do 3 processes. We have to build a bear, we have to injection mold some plastic, and we have to do electronics. What of that can we do so that we can oversee it? And what of that has to be outsourced? And then moving from there, just would have probably streamlined a lot of the meetings I had over there and shortened the whole negotiation process that wasn't all too pleasant.
You really seem to sort of change your philosophy with the LCD and the game. And I'm wondering kind of what in the process kind of led you into that and sort of user testing you're doing.
Sure. So I think the biggest insight that we had was from our alpha testing. And our alpha testing, in the process of testing with 300 children, we actually gathered about 10 families in Rhode Island to actually give the bear with the journal to have the bear in your homes for a week, and we will just not interrupt their flow. And when we brought our bears back, we went to their house, drove there, and to pick it up. And what was really interesting was that these kids play with about 22 hours in a week, and this is just a simple bear that you can just inject and check their blood glucose level. But what we realized was that the interaction is really limited. And our goal is to make this bear to last for more than 3 months, but we don't want to make a bear that lasts for a week and just drops off. And from our insight was, how can you build the interaction that is more greater than what we have right now?
Well, and building on that, we had tested among sort of two groups. One were the kids who were newly diagnosed within 6 months of receiving the bear, and then there was the kids who were diagnosed greater than 6 months. And so the kids that were newly diagnosed logged 21 hours of play over every single day. The kids that weren't newly diagnosed, even by 6 months, they logged 2 days of play, 3 hours each day. It's a really sharp drop-off. And so we sort of extrapolated between those 2 points of, okay, the level of interaction we have now is really, really good for a child who's just been diagnosed with diabetes, but it won't track over the time that they learn to do what they want to do. And so one of the advantages of going towards this color touchscreen was the ability to deploy and change our interface in the same way you would tweak a website. So we might realize that a lot of the stuff we created it might be too much, but what we can do is we could take it down to some subset that's reduced, and we could throw up our same analog buttons on the screen and have that replicate the same interaction that we had. And yes, it's a shame because we had a much more expensive piece of hardware that's in their hands, but it gives us the ability to kind of tweak it in real time. So I think a lot of it does need to be tested. We haven't tested any of these games yet, but from what we've seen in our user testing, it seems like a logical trajectory.
I think I read somewhere that you guys are looking for interns. Is that worth mentioning?
That's true. At 7 o'clock, we are having an info session in LR4.
And we're looking for a very talented group of 3 people to help us sell the bear and really market that to many, many families across the nation. Join our team this summer. Yes, Mark.
Running Sproutel right out of college is a courageous alternative. It's sort of the side path.
Seems like you're also tuning someone else this morning.
Yeah.
I think social entrepreneurship is an amazing thing that one can do with his or her life, and I respect and commend you guys so much for it. But it is alternative. Most people don't do it. Most people get a job. Can you make a case for social entrepreneurship? Why should I, as a senior or a junior in college, seriously consider being an entrepreneur? What are, we talked about a lot of the problems, and trust me, me and Yuri face some of those problems too, but what are the amazing parts about being a social entrepreneur?
I'm gonna go first.
So, I mean, emotionally, it's those rewarding moments that Hannah shared from the kids. If for no other reason than that, I think that's a fantastic reason. But if you're talking from like a rational and logical standpoint of why you want to convince somebody to do this before you would go and work in a big company, the skills that you learn from being an entrepreneur, whether it's a social entrepreneur or just an entrepreneur, only set you up to get a better job. Somebody's not going to look at your resume and be like, oh, well, they tried to start a company. Don't want to hire them now. It's only an indication of what type of person you are. And for both of us, I know the majority of what we've been working on has kind of went through cycles and almost changed every 3 months, from hardware development to marketing to making partnerships to sales. And it's going to continue to keep on changing. And with each change is learning a new set of skills. And I truly believe that that is incredibly valuable. And there are very few things that can prepare you that way for really a whole host of possibilities of whatever you want to do in your professional career. And you should never be afraid of failure because, a lot of people say, I don't want to start something right out of school because I'll fail. It's like, well, if you started something right out of school and you fail, you've only put yourself in a position to get a better job. You've just like done your own form of an alternative grad school. So that's really my philosophy, and I'll let Hannah build on that as I'm sure she has her own thoughts.
I don't think there is a failing story in entrepreneurship. I mean, even though your business fails, you learn a lot that other people will not get to experience. Even though you do if your business does well, that's also a really great story. And then my philosophy is, some say your brain power dies down when you hit 26. Maybe it's not true, but my philosophy is, do a lot of, that's not true. I know it's not true, but, no, but for me, it's like, I feel like, when you have the most energy and when you have the most momentum, why not use the momentum to do something really crazy? That's my model behind if those entrepreneurs are going along with Aaron. But I think the beauty of that is you get to learn so many different things by doing so many different projects. You get to wear different hats, and you meet a lot of lifelong people along the way. But the thing is, though, I intern at different companies too, and I think there's a lot to learn in the companies too. There are terms like entrepreneurs who make that change in companies too. And it definitely depends on your fit, but it's always, I think overall, it's really important to have the mindset, no matter where I go, how can I create that social impact? How can I inspire other people to do the same with the mindset that I have? So I think it's really important to keep in mind, no matter what you're doing, that has a social entrepreneurship-esque mindset, no matter where you go.